because they need the collapse to bring in the new central bank digital currencies, and it won't go quietly into the night. Like, yeah, it has to get to a pinch point and a pain point before people will say yes to this new planned economy, for a better term. And look at the amount of people that are currently working in renewable energy. It's almost 14 million jobs that will be lost. Now you have to look at factory work in itself. So if the oil gets into an embargoed situation again, almost every factory in America will stop unless it's pushing for the war machine. It's a hopeful program today. You know, we look through history and we see these flows of what we consider cycles of contraction and expansion. If you're over 30 years old, you live through an expansion cycle and you're now experiencing the contraction. But it's been like this time immemorial through history. We're experiencing nothing more than the ebb and flow. So in today's program, I want to frame it as what the problem might be inbound if the oil stops or gets curtailed. But what did we learn from the 1970s? What did we learn from World War II? How resilient can we really be? And how can we get ourselves to work together instead of infighting like the media is trying to teach us this unnatural behavior? So as we go through today, I want to talk about ancient history with what's happening over in the Middle East and try to wind it into a very hopeful, positive message that you don't need to live in fear. And welcome back. Mini Ice Age Conversations right here. David Dubine with the Adapt 2030 channel on Brighteon TV, uncensored. So those of you old enough to remember the Beverly Hillbillies, black gold, Texas tea in the cement pond, that is the lifeblood of our economy. That's what makes the world go round. And I'm really surprised how we're getting shifted and moved over into windmills and solar panels without talking about electrogravitics and anti-gravity technologies that some of our aircraft and advanced weaponry systems are using. But that means free power for the people. You might not have to work as much anymore. But it is about the oil. That's the weapon that the Middle East has against the United States. Hard to strike over here. Yeah, there could be some sleeper cells. Yeah. But in terms of like major damage, the way they're going to do it is cut off the oil here. Now, I don't know if you saw, Venezuela has just had all the sanctions lifted from America, so we can take the oil now because last week they're bad, this week they're good. And suddenly we can get their oil, oh, and the gold too. So as we go through today's program, I want to frame it off as to like all the signals are everywhere right now. How you can prepare yourself and get a little bit ready. Like these are the major big money players signaling it's going. So how do you prepare for that? And then again, you know, how do we get ready? And what we've seen in some places through history. Now, as you see, Libya and many other governments now beyond Libya are calling for a complete oil embargo of any Western aligned nation that aligns with Israel. Well, they know that would be devastating for the economies. But tit for tat, as I did in last program, it seems that the West is trying to hit Iranian oil production to cut off China's flow to stop the evolution of the gold market and the cornerstone for the gold-backed currency in the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what we see is then the reverse happening. They're calling for an embargo of Western oil here. And if oil, this is off CNBC, if oil hits 150, you know, that'll be $8 an hour per gallon gasoline on average. If it goes to 250, you'll be on rations. Meanwhile, Fortune warns the S&P is heading below 3,000. Two of the biggest stock market crashes happened in October 1929 and Black Monday 1987. Seasonally, we're entering the best 6-month period for gold and silver, along with the Fed nearing the end of their rate hikes. Gold is poised to skyrocket. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. When you call them, mention the Adapt 2030 channel. They're going to give you some great in-class service. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. And the no fee for life IRA is on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call. 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. So the first thing you need to get familiar with is what happened during the World War II rationing. And another glimpse in history, you want to take a look at the oil embargo in the 1970s. Now, there's a lot of similarities of people had to wait in lines. There was some, not nearly what you're used to getting. So you're going to have to prepare in advance, maybe get some extra gasoline cans. So if the word comes down, you could at least run and get the last 10, 15, 20 gallons in some cans that could keep you going. Now we're coming into winter time now, so you're not going to have to worry about mowing your yard, but you would have to want to think about having fuel for your generators. Now, eventually that fuel will run out if we're not able to be replenished. So use it sparingly and learn from those who've done this once before, actually twice in chapters of history, very familiar with us. This is not a be-all, end-all societal collapse thing in any way, shape, or form. It's a restriction of lifestyle. Supply chains will be heavily affected. Again, they're going to ration in supermarkets. Learn what you were able to get in World War II during rations. Then you can plan for it. So you know sugar is going to be rationed, butter, meat. So perhaps you could go plan in advance, and if you have some extra money, go get those things right now, because those were the absolute rationed items. And then we look today at the inflationary unexpected jump over a full percent of what they were expecting. Now, it's not nearly as high as it was at the, like I said, apex of COVID, but that vertical going back up again, if this oil does get cut off, it's going to jump far, far past even the highs that we saw during COVID. And this will be an economy ending or stagnation type of event. So again, how do you think about work? Do you have any extra money set aside for your land taxes? See, that's again, 1930s. How did they take everybody's land? Well, they didn't pay their land tax, property tax. So at the bare minimum, the banks will, just like they did in COVID, I am pretty sure that in the banks, there'll be some sort of regulations put forth where you can't, kick people out of their homes. But with the counties and paying property tax, that's a different animal. If you're going to save aside money for something, property tax. Also, it would be a good idea to hit some gold and silver at this time too, because in a hyperinflationary or extremely inflationary event, gold and silver, you'd be able to pay your property tax and perhaps even help others, because this is going to be what it's about. And that was the thing that I learned again and again. Those who helped others always did the best. Those who tried to be stingy and so self-absorbed that they didn't even want to share 1 gram of anything with anybody else, or 1 milliliter or 1 ounce of oil with anybody, gasoline, they were the ones who got along the worst, because everybody started making walls around them, or they became their own island that they had a more difficult time not being in a community. So take that, I'm just looking back in history. Now here we go. These are the signals that are out right now. Banks are in a collapse phase anyway. They were not offering enough interest, so people were pulling their money out and putting it over in, whatever funds that were offering 5% currently. Now, these are all the major banks in America, and look at the steep declines in these. This is from the beginning of the year to now, so over, 10 months period. Citigroup at the top left, Morgan Stanley, top right, bottom left, Goldman Sachs. And then if we look at Bank of America, bottom right. These are supposed to be the too big to fail behemoths. And look at the stock valuations on these things going down, down, down. At what point do these FANG stocks start dropping right along with it? Now, why do I bring up JP Morgan? Well, Jamie Dimon of renown, CEO. Now, look at that and highlighted in blue right there. He's selling $140 million worth of stock right now. And it's the first time he's ever done that. And he even comes out publicly. I want to point out that the central banks 18 months ago were 100% dead wrong. So this is the big money, and it is moving, and it is signaling to you to move with it. And, unless it's a gigantic, this is a once in a literal lifetime signal that he is sending to the public for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Again, first stock sale of his tenure. And I thought, well, how long has Jamie Dimon been there? I know the guy had been around the news forever, but really, how long has he been there? Since 2005. So you realize I'm not going to say exactly 20 years, but 18 years, he has not sold a single share of his stock. And now he's dumping 140 million of it in one fell swoop. Now, what does that tell you? It tells me the same thing, like those rats exited out in 2008 and everybody got rid of their shares, as well as our politicians who are inside trading have dumped a bunch of shares too. I encourage you to take a look at the congressional record where they need to indicate when they sell shares. There's a massive selling spree going on with our politicians. So between our own government and the inside scam traders called politicians that have sold out our country, that are making money off of us, they're exiting all of the stock market positions as quickly as they can without setting off too many alarm bells. But too many of them are selling on the congressional record for it not to be noticeable. And then Morgan comes out and is like, 140 million, that's a lot. That's an enormous amount. 5 million here, 10 million there, maybe. But 140 million, that's like big flag up in the air there. And then we take a look at all the central banks around the world buying as much gold as they can possibly get their hands on. And this was the thing that China was trying to corner the gold market by offering more money on the Shanghai Gold Exchange to try to siphon the gold over to China. And that wouldn't be, see, that doesn't fall under this category of buying because it's not a central bank, it's the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It's not the Chinese government, although they are one and the same, but you got to split the hair on that. So Shanghai Gold Exchange offering more to pull it over. That's outside this government number of how many tons have been bought by central banks. So everywhere you look, you see this whole central bank buying spree. So, you know, the roadmap's pretty clear here. A lot of things were in turmoil anyway. China needs a reset worse or as badly as we do because their real estate's collapsing. The societal problems are just outrageous in China. You know, you got new graduates that have PhDs that are working at McDonald's that can't even find jobs or unemployed with a PhD. You know, the marriage rates over there during that one-child policy, there are approximately 40 million more men than women currently at marrying age. So that is skewed. Possibility for owning a home is, it's so, if you think American homes are unaffordable, it's probably a 10x unaffordability rate in China. Like they understand they're never going to own a home. So for the new generation to make society work, you got to let them believe that there's hope that they can actually get the dream. Well, you see Gen Z here, everybody's saying, no, the dream's dead. I can't afford a home. I'll never even be able to retire. Look at this, you know, show that we're stuck into. They don't want to go to corporate jobs because they know they can't retire. It's draining on the soul and everybody's calling it out for what it is. And even here, we see the same like hopelessness for that dream that was sold to the younger generation to keep that social contract moving and can keep society intact. It's gone on all ends. And then you got the war kicking off. You think they're going to be hopeful over there? And look at the ECB and the European Union. They got 2 pipelines down. And they're trying to lift more sanctions from Russia so they can import gas, and they put the sanctions back on after that. I was just like, and we're trying to lift sanctions off of Venezuela to get more oil. But as soon as we don't need it, we'll put the sanctions back on. Like wherever you look around the world, especially from Europe to the United States, China, you know, Russia is kind of an outlier in this. Their economy keeps expanding, and they're looking pretty good over there comparatively. I'm just saying comparatively. And, you know, you look down in South America. I mean, Argentina just surpassed Zimbabwe for the highest inflation rate in the world. And a lot of those other countries down there are struggling with 30 to 50% inflation rates. So the whole world needs a reset on this. You know, and I'm wondering, is a foe really a foe? Are we seeing this play out for real? Or is this just a scripted, choreographed play to try to get us to the ultimate, cut off the oil? That was the plan. Sink everybody's economy. That's the plan. And I'll come to the Bank for International Settlements plan to replace all the fiat currencies as we move through this. Now, the green panic, green energy, as you understand, as an investment medium, it seems like it's kind of over as well. We see a lot of people pushing back, not in my backyard. There's not enough silver to do it. There's not enough copper to do this. Like the realization for the minerals themselves to move, you have to double the entire world production of copper in the next 10 years. And when I say world production, I'm talking every single ounce of copper mined in the last 2,000 years to today needs to be doubled in the next 10 for us to continue on the green agenda, which it won't, it can't. And the silver also, it's going to be turned into a monetary metal. So they won't have enough silver for all these, you know, EVs and all these, you know, green devices that we see forced down our throats. Like there was never a choice of the options to move over to renewable energies. I encourage you to look at Nikola Tesla and magnetic motors that are running on the Earth's magnetic field. Just basically magnets that spin against each other, positive, negative, they spin. You know, they try to repel each other. And you can harness that on a spindle. Right now we burn something to make the spindle move. But if you have sets of magnets, they do the same thing. They spin in reverse and you have your spindle moving. Same, but different. But you don't need to burn anything, import anything. Start wars over the materials to make that spindle. You can't fight over the Earth's magnetic field. So we jumped straight to solar panels when we should have jumped straight to electrogravitics, but we didn't. So Siemens is collapsing. They were going to declare bankruptcy, but the German banks and the ECB, European Central Bank, jumped in to stop one of the largest corporations in Germany and the EU from completely collapsing. There's no real equivalent for how big Siemens is, and BASF also. These two are going down. These are the behemoths of Europe, and they need bailouts because they're in collapse. So this was the World Economic Forum's baby darling to get us to windmills. So of course they're going to get bought out, propped up, and have money flow into it. So now we got the green energy in jeopardy. The rare earth minerals aren't there at the levels we need them. So you can see everywhere what was planned was just fictitious. It was just about to, railroad money into certain industries, like George Bush was talking about switchgrass back in the day when we were moving toward ethanol, but it turned out to be just grow more corn. But when he talked switchgrass, some of these companies with a few $1,000s in valuation jumped up to multi-millions, and they made a fortune on calling switchgrass and then investing in all those companies before they released the switchgrass ethanol announcements out there. Again, scoundrel politicians. But it's the one, sorry, it's a little grainy, but it's a wind energy cost. I thought wind energy was free. Me too. Solar panels, the sun, it's free. But then you look at really what the costs were for wind energy. You got the turbine purchases, the land clearing, the maintenance, the backup power, the green propaganda. Oh, am I allowed to say that? Greenwashing. And by the time you go through this, the ROI on it barely pays for itself after an entire 20-year operation period. So the scamola is, the next thing is going to be the carbon taxes. So what we understand as the resetting world has run its course and slammed into a wall, and I believe on purpose. Because they need the collapse to bring in the new central bank digital currencies, and it won't go quietly into the night. It has to get to a pinch point and a pain point before people will say yes to this new planned economy, for a better term. And look at the amount of people that are currently working in renewable energy. That's almost 14 million jobs that will be lost. Now you have to look at factory work in itself. So if the oil gets into an embargoed situation again, almost every factory in America will stop unless it's pushing for the war machine. Like federal ammunition was just, I wouldn't say taken over by the government, but contracted under the government for 5.56 rounds that are no longer for public sale. And SG apparently is kind of teetering at the moment on that. So two of the major manufacturers for what would be civilian purchases of that is now being dried up and 100% sent to the military. So obviously they know we're getting into a bigger conflict. You could look at it and say, well, they're trying to, use a roundabout way to take ammo from the citizens. But I'm looking at it in a different way, going, this is planning to get way big, destroy a lot of stuff, destroy a lot of fiat currencies, disrupt a huge amount of lives. And then they come up with this solution after this. The map will probably be redrawn using AI. They'll probably use artificial intelligence to try to put tribal fusions and split that again. A good example would be India when they drew the map between Pakistan and India. They split right down religious and ethnic boundaries and causing some of the chaos because they were sandwiched together versus keeping the old boundaries of religion and tribe with. You see that as Africa's infamous for that as well. The English did a very good job at driving wedges between people. And I do believe the map will be redrawn because they need peace for a while, for at least the next 80-year cycle. So how many times have we seen the map redrawn across our world? World War I. You ever take a look at the post and pre-World War I maps back into the early 1900s? Very different from today. They got things like Ottoman Empire still on there. World War II, post-World War II, how much was redrawn during that time as well? Take a look at go into the 1930s maps and look at 1950 map. and see how that is. Or look at an 1899 map and then come up and look at a 1920s map. Hugely different. The amount of countries keeps getting more divided and more divided. The divide and conquer strategy was in play, but they're going to have to get some peace after this, because you come into this conflagration here and huge, gigantic world war type of thing. They're going to need a little bit of peace to reset the system, because nobody's going to want to reset in that kind of tumultuous situation. So I would envision, as it reaches its apex, when we come down on the backside of this, there will be peace for decades, plural, on this planet, while everything is rebuilt and the system restarts. But that's just part of the fourth turning. Now back to, I get distracted sometimes on my rants. 13.7 million people. The voltaics, the solar panels, that's the lion's share of that. Now the ones who might not be so affected would be the bioenergy and the hydropower, because those are more stable, that we'll need for the war effort. Wind energy, big whoop. Solar heating and cooling, that's only for homes. Government won't care about you or I. We're disposable, by the way. So understand that. You're disposable, I'm disposable. They don't care about us during the wartime. The only thing that's worried about is making more money for the companies and making sure that the country comes out on top. And it doesn't matter if they go down to the last one American, they will do that to make sure that they will keep the dollar supreme on the planet, or try to, or die trying. That's a scary thing. So speaking of energy and food, the most important things that makes our world go round, I'll look at the profits of these companies. So I'm more looking at the orange and the purple, because that's the last 2 years, 21, 22. Look at the, staggering amounts of money on the food and the energy side as we come into a contraction side for almost everybody with inflation, and they're making record profits, and we're getting nothing more than inflation, and our money is buying less, while these companies continue to raise prices and make more money for their buybacks, their dividends, and the shareholders. It's what I see here. This is nothing more than a wealth transfer, and it seems to be allowed to happen. At what point do we say, no, we no longer buy your products, we can produce our own, or buy something else? But Bunge, Cargill, and Archer Daniels, they control a huge amount of the markets. They've gotten into this monopoly positioning where they're the only players in town. There's really no secondary unless you produce your own, which we're going to be forced to. Learn about gardening and what the victory gardens were all about, and how communities came together in a victory garden. But get ready, it's a coming. The tidal wave is here. So we're going to go into other ways you can protect yourself based on the past, and we are going to rip into some ancient history. So if you're looking for ruins in the desert and cycles of the past, stay tuned for the second part. And we'll also talk about the Bank for International Settlements and their unified ledger. I'll see you then.